Hey everyone, this is more a concept video. I wanted to talk about marginal cards. So I kind of want to talk about this because I've been hearing from people constantly, we should put Viper in this deck. Why don't we have Viper in this deck? I think Viper would be good in this deck. And then also when I'm playing my Ram Druid, I've been experimenting with cutting Ibis. And when I cut Ibis, everybody asks, wait, Ibis not good? I thought Ibis was good. We should run Ibis in this deck. And here's the reality is I think people live in this world of a card is good or it is bad. And that is about a small percentage of cards that are played in decks. A lot of cards are what we call marginal. So marginal, what does that mean? It means on the margin. It's close for it's close on the good bad line, the good enough line. It's kind of might make the cut, but barely, you know. It's a thing of yes, this card might be good enough, but there might be something better. There might be a meta change that changes from marginal to unmarginal. So we have cards, for example, I'm going to go on later, but Mutinous used to be for a while was a unmarginal tech choice that everyone was running because it was so good. Now when you look at Mutinous in a lot of decks, it is one of the weakest cards in the deck. It kind of went to strong, and now it's on the low end of marginal. Actually, I think a lot of decks should be cutting Mutinous. It just doesn't make the cut in such a rogue heavy meta. So it's a thing of players kind of get in these 1-0 mindsets of this card good, this card bad. And most cards are, like I said, on the margin. There are a few cards. So let's start a look at Ramp Druid. And we're going to be using drawn win rate as sort of a proxy. Drawn win rate isn't perfect, but it's very useful. So drawn win rate has some biases, but we're going to use it. And you can see Wildheart Guff, strongest drawn win rate in the deck, by far, not even close. What do we learn from this? Guff good. You can see it has the highest mulligan win rate by far. You could see it even has a higher mulligan win rate than Overgrowth by far. It is so absolutely good. It is so deck enabling. It is so powerful. And if we could run 2 Guffs, we would. Nobody debates, hey, should we cut Guff from Ramp Druid? No. That's how you know it's not marginal. It is a darn good card. It is very powerful. On the other hand, there are cards that are on the margin that aren't quite as good. Now, Druid has a little bit more biases, but I've experimented with cutting Guess the Weight, cutting Ibis. If we go to Legend, let's see. I think so. Ibis, you can see stats can change. It looks like Guess the Weight interesting is still good, but Druid has, I think, drawn word isn't perfect, but you can see even Abominable Tenant, unfortunately for the deck Belly Druid, is on the low end of the drawn win rate scale. I've been experimenting with cutting 1 in my previous video, if you saw, with Variant. And if we go look, I actually have my own personal stats from about 40 games of that new version, and you can see that Broom and Talon are sort of on the margins, which is expected. These are cards that we kind of put in for their synergy with Varian, but they're cards that you don't actually want to draw. But that being said, that this is one of those cases where it's misleading because if you draw them, well then you play Varian, it doesn't get the Divine Shield. There's certain weaknesses going on, so this is not a perfect situation. But the bottom line is, you can see certain cards, and you can see my Abominable Tenant. Maybe I should put a second one in. But that being said, this is only 40 games. It's obviously, you can see Wildheart Guff, definitely better than right in the middle. So it suffers from small sample size. But the point I'm trying to make is that not all cards are created equal, and a lot of cards are sort of an ideal world. We would run maybe 22 cards in a deck, or 18 cards in a deck, and every card would be good. But that being said, we have to run 30 cards in a deck, and sometimes we don't want to run 30 cards, or sometimes we kind of need a card to get us to the late game, even though it's not that good. It might have to make the cut because there are no alternatives, and a new alternative comes up. So what I'm trying to emphasize is, not all cards are good. Not all cards, or a lot of cards are on that marginal thing, and you want to be figuring out what cards are on the margin and what cards are not on the margin. Let's go to Quest Hand Warlock. I think this is a really good example. And let's go to the most popular deck and try to guess which drawn win rate has the highest. I'm pretty sure it's Flesh Giant. Interesting. Flesh Giant's up there. So that's kind of interesting. Battlegrounds Battlemaster has one of the highest drawn win rates. That's interesting. But that being said, Flesh Giant's still, absolutely one of the strongest cards in the deck. A Narathon, that's very well known. If you get a Narathon quickly, the deck is massively, massively strong. But you can see towards the bottom, it's full-blown evil. And if we go back here, you can see, and these are the cards I get asked about when I'm playing Hand Warlock all the time. I'm running Occult Neophytes. I'm not running full-blown evil. Is full-blown evil not good? It's not good. It's marginal. Altar Fire. I love how you got Cold, Altar Fire, Full-blown evil, all right next to each other in drawn win rate. They're all very similar in strength. They all have different strengths and advantages. And if the meta changes one direction or not, but they're not that good, but they're not bad. Like, that's what I mean. They're marginal. They're a spot where they're not going to make that much of a difference. So I think I get all these questions, all these people just absolutely agonizing over marginal cards. They're like, oh, I'll never get the legend unless I get every single thing perfectly. And the reality is you don't need a perfect deck. You need the good stuff. Like, if you said, hey, I'm thinking about cutting a Narathon and Flesh Giants from my Hand Warlock deck and putting 2 Colts and 2 Altar Fires, what do you think? I'd be like, you're an idiot. Don't do it. And that's the difference. Some cards are core, they're strong, they're important, and some cards are marginal. And we want, like I said, we want to figure out which cards are marginal and which are not. And what's nice is if you're like a budget player, a free-to-play player, if a card is marginal, you can cut it. And maybe it's worse, maybe it's better. You might come up with some new innovation because you had to cut a card and say, oh, this card is actually better than that card. Or this card, maybe not better than that card, but maybe we need to cut something else for that card. So it's a thing of a lot of times, the core gets figured out of a deck, but the margins are kind of what people are experimenting in with. And there's so much argument and so much conflict. Everybody's saying, oh, you think Altar Fire is good? Dude, it's all about the Cold Neophytes. Oh, no, it's about the full-blown evil. They're all marginal. It doesn't matter. Like, it's not that big a deal. You get your list perfect and, maybe you get a 0.5% win rate, but you know what will actually help your win rate? Playing good. And you know what doesn't help you play good? Agonizing over marginal card choice decisions. Let's go to Bullner OTK Shaman. And you can see here, like I said, Mutinous is still not doing as good as it used to. Instructor Fireheart as well. And these are kind of I have to have these cards. And you can see they're on the margin. You could probably sub both of these cards out for something else. You know what's not on the margin? Snowfall Guardian, best card in the deck. So like I said, if somebody's like, oh, do I need Mutinous to play this deck? Reality is no, and not anymore. It's just not a good meta call. But if somebody says, can I cut Snowfall Guardian? You see the difference? The one card is marginal, one card is not marginal. It is just good. And what's interesting is I think, so you can see Circus Medic, low drawn win rate, marginal. And you're probably thinking, but Mr. No Hands, I need the Circus Medic to OTK my opponent. How will I ever win if I cannot OTK my opponent? And the answer is you don't need to OTK them. You can just go. So if you've watched my other Bullner OTK video, I almost never would get the OTK off. I'd often go like a Yasharaj, get 3 dunk tanks, and then go like a Brilliant Macaw the next turn and get 6 dunk tanks. There's stuff you can do. So I don't think that's necessarily the right choice right now because other than Rogue, Druid is popular. It's probably the second most popular class, I'm guessing. So what you want against Druid is you actually, because they have so much armor gain, you actually kind of need the OTK. But the bottom line is, what I'm trying to say is, this Circus Medic, a card that people think is absolutely so core that you absolutely have to have, is at the end of the day marginal. You don't need it. All right, you can play a different version. You can try something else out. So what I'm trying to emphasize is if you're trying to play a deck, if you're trying to make a deck, or if you're trying to modify a deck, maybe for budget reasons, maybe for your own fun, you want to be figuring out what cards are marginal, what cards are not marginal. So you want to find, like I said, if we could run 2 Guffs and Ramp Druid, we would cut literally anything. I'd cut Cenarian Horde, which is a really good card in the deck. But if I could get 2 Guffs, I would prefer to have 2 Guffs. All right, I can regenerate. I can generate another Cenarian Ward. I can't generate another Guff. I can kind of with Moonlit Guidance, but the point is, certain cards are just absolutely core. And so you could say I've been trying out the deck without Ibis. You could see in my previous video, but because Ibis is marginal. Now Ibis might be good enough. Now marginal, like I said, does not mean bad. And to cut Ibis, you need to find a card that is even marginally better. So now we're experimenting with this. A lot of my experiments might be wrong, but the bottom line is, it's on the margin. So if you're on a budget player, like I said, figure out what cards are marginal, and then you could just replace it with something that is also marginal. So let's say you wanted to find cards that other people are running. You can go to Ramp Druid here on HS Replay and go to Mulligan Guide and look at like drawn win rate and see, okay, so I'm going to look. So we already experimented with Goliath Sneed, and it was just kind of meh. It was okay. Actually, it was pretty cool in certain situations. But you might have, if you bought the mini expansion, you have this card. So you might say, okay, I'm going to try this card out in replacement for Ibis. Viper, a card you might say, okay, I'm going to put in a Viper instead of Ibis. I'm sure you guys have Ibises. Now, some of these are a little misleading, I think, because I don't, but you could try out Clowns. You could try out Speaker Gidra. You could put in Munis. I don't think Munis is that good right now, but it might be like, you could put it in. You could put in Spammy Archivist. You could put in Forest Ward and Armo. And you're like, are these good? No, they are marginal. So the point is they're not the best cards in the deck. They're not the strongest. They're not the most useful. But what they are is they're good enough. So, will you have the absolute perfect, most optimized list? Not necessarily. But you can have a list of this. So you can sub out your own cards. And like you said, you can look and you can find what you have. And you can see here, like I'm on my Europe account. And I'm looking at Handlock. And I don't have Dreadlich Tamsin. So I probably absolutely have to craft that thing with Barons. But maybe I could get away without running Tamsin of the two. So if I had that, Tamsin, definitely a good card in the deck. But, you might be able to get away with not running her. She's kind of on the margin. There have been lists that don't run her, and she's definitely good, but I would definitely be running a list with her if I had her. But like I said, she's closer to marginal. You don't need her. You could, let's say, for example, you wanted to bring Handlock, but you couldn't brand Poison Rogue. You might run 2 Vipers over Tamsin. You can see Tamsin is very similar drawn win rate to Viper overall. So like I said, the point I'm making, and I might make another video on this, we also have this in our gameplay. So often our gameplay, we have marginal decisions as well. So I see players agonizing over, did I do this right or did I do this right? And both plays were probably fine. Now, there are other spots where players do absolutely horrible plays, myself included, where you actually have huge potential, like changing your play might change your win rate from a 20% that game to a 90%. There are spots like that. I have a game in my last video where I don't play my play fast enough. I don't play the broom and control the board fast enough. And if I improve that really, really hard, complicated play, we won the game probably. But because I messed it up, we lost that game 100%. So with better play there, our win rate could have gone from 0% that game to maybe 70 or 80%. That's a huge difference. So you can see more often it's like, well, do I play the Intrepid Initiate or do I play the Wolpertingers? Now, one is probably better than the other, but it might be like 1% better. Both plays might be fine. But both plays might have an advantage. So it's a thing of you might be able to still, like when you're trying to get #1 legend, you have to get every one of those little marginal things right. But if you're just trying to get to legend or even get to like top 1,000 legend, it's more about you don't have to necessarily get all these marginal decisions perfect. You can just get them good enough and then find the areas where you have a big area of room to improve your play. So like I said, bottom line is go ahead, put Viper in your deck, cut something else out. Just make sure the thing you're cutting is marginal. But the bottom line is there are lots of different ways you can build your deck because a lot of cards are just on the margin. It's not that big a deal. You can do whatever you want. You don't have to ask me. And so it's a thing of, if you're going to ask me like a good question, because I get annoyed and, I'm human. I'm sorry. I lose my patience. As players ask, wait, is Ibis not good? And like, or is Altar of Fire not good? I think Altar of Fire is great. They're like, and Altar of Fire was never good. All right, it was always marginal, and marginal can be marginally good enough, but it wasn't. It wasn't a Flesh Giant. It wasn't a Tamsin. It wasn't a Guff. It wasn't the absolute broken powerhouse of the deck. It was marginal. Marginal could still be good enough, but it's not good. All right, and that's the distinction. So if you ask me a question, it's like a good question would be like, is Ibis marginal or is it core? And I would say it's marginal. You know, where I think maybe Ibis, the only card where it's close to core and it still might be on the margin is in Beast Druid, because you can double Ibis with your Oracle. And that's a lot stronger than in Ramp Druid. So that's my bottom line. Anyways, hope you guys found this interesting. Trying to do sort of topics like this that I just think of because, like I said, we got 10 days of Rogue coming up. So anyways, I hope you guys like this and enjoy.